Hello, everyone. Hello, Anna. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Hello.
Hi. Hello, everyone, for joining today's live webinar. We had a little bit of technical issues, so that's why we are a little bit late, and I think our LinkedIn having a issue as well. So I think we can fix that issue specifically. If it's not, you can watch this live webinar on other social media like Facebook and Instagram, and as well as YouTube. So if you're watching this live on LinkedIn, that's fine, because we're just checking if the live event is broadcasting now, because we tried to edit the event. We could not do it, but anyway, it is recorded as well, so we can share this recording later. So Anna, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's my last day at the Innovation Centre till the new year now. So I've got some time off. I wonder how many founders and people listening are going to have a bit of time off. I feel like this end of year is very tiring. So my son's going to be off for a couple of weeks. We're going to have a nice time to reset, and particularly like for my ADHD brain, the end of year, I'm just sort of quite overwhelmed with everything. So get a bit of a reset before 2026 starts, which I'm looking forward to.
I totally agree with you, because I think it's a Christmas, isn't it? So we would say Happy Christmas and Merry Christmas to everyone.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I think, is the last day of many of the people in the UK and in globally. So if you are in the UK or any other parts of the world, enjoy your time, Christmas, and then we will have New Year. Christmas and New Year for anyone. So today, Anna, we just wanted to discuss about the change of legislation for ND people, neurodivergent people, or disabled people. And I think this is a burning issue nowadays, because where government, they are cutting lots of benefits, and as well as not aiding disabled people that much for them to return back to work. So in that scenario, I think is a catch-22 situation right now for any disabled person. They wanted to return back to work, or they wanted to
Yeah.
access benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's this, this is really well timed as well, because there's the new employment rights bill that's just sort of gone through Parliament. And I know that it was approved in the House of Lords, I think. So, it's really interesting at the moment, this talk around rights, because I mean, I did have a look at some of the ones there, and there was a couple of ones that I was really pleased with. I know that it's a bit more watered down than some people were hoping for in the employment rights bill, although some businesses, I think the other one was maybe too much, but it was things like I think there's some really good pregnancy and maternity rights that weren't in there before, where so you're a bit more protected. There's things around I think unfair dismissal and that, which comes in much earlier. So there are those things, because I know, like, as we've been sort of employees at work, it's nice to see, just there's been some terrible things recently, like you said, with the disabilities and removing, some support and that. So, for employed people, there seems to be a few bits sort of coming in, but for business owners, it'd be nice to see more for us as well. I think that level of support, we talked previously about access to work, PIP. I don't feel like enough of those maybe go far enough in supporting people. Access to work is lovely. I mean, I have access to work. I do think it's really good, but it is hard to get.
Mhm.
And PIP is harder than ever to get. So then there seems to be this sort of middle ground, where you're disabled but not disabled enough to get some help. And we talk about leveling up and equity, and they often show that picture of three people standing by a sort of fence, and you give them all the same height box, and the smallest one can't see over, and then you give them a box of the height that they need. And
Mhm.
I feel like access to work and PIP help the person that needs help, and then you've got the people that don't need any help. But there's this kind of no man's land in the middle where you do need some help, but not maybe as much help. But to equal it up, you still need equaling up. And I feel that those people get a bit left out with, oh, you can muddle through, you can get on with it. When I did my understanding autism, when we're talking about sort of high functioning autism, Asperger's, where people maybe once again can get through. I've ADHD. I did the same at school. I kind of got through it, but has it left me with anxiety and trauma? Absolutely. So I feel like there's so much more we need to do.
I totally agree with you. As you described, like disabled but not seen as disabled, I fall into that category, and it's just like a pain, because if you wanted to access disability, it's the system is totally absurd, I would say, because it will tailor you. Can you do it? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So normally, what we do, yes, I can do it, but sometimes I cannot. So when you click, you can do it, you are out of the box.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is not tailored to benefit people like me and people like you, or many, I would say thousands of disabled people. They don't get proper benefits. Either way, we contribute to the tax, we contribute to socially, we contribute a lot of different things. But at the end, when it's in terms of benefits, it's just one box. But one box will not fit everyone. So that's the point. We need the legislation needs to be changed, because those people, they wanted to work, and they wanted to access these social benefits, any of the social benefits. They don't fit. They don't fit for purpose. And when you think about work and PEEP and all those things, it is like, in a way, I think the social economic boundaries make them, you don't need to work. You are because you don't have capacity of work. Why? Because you are receiving these benefits. But when I receive certain types of benefits, like I receive access to work, it aid a lot of different things, and I get benefited, and I can work more. But in terms of it comes on PIP, certain things I cannot do. Last week is very sad for me. I cooked something, and I have to pick my son from school. I forgot to turn the stove off. Okay. And I spent more than an hour. My mother in law was in the sitting room, and it burned away. The fire brigade has to come, although it wasn't any mess. They just came and turned off the stove. I could not reach home on time. These kind of things can happen because I have memory problems. So I need aid like this. It could we could if I'm most of the time when I cook, something happen like this. I cannot add aid because someday I can, someday I can't. And this one can be judged by the PIP, because they say, okay, you are okay, you can do this. Sometimes I struggle due to my disabilities. Sometimes I can't. So when I say, okay, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, that means you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we need to change this, because disability benefits should be fit for purpose, tailored to everyone. They're receiving it.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be this sort of more holistic view of these benefits as well, because I was reading a lot of stuff recently about this, getting people back to work. Get back to work. People need to work, and I like working. I really enjoy it, and I do agree that if you are in a place that you can work, finding a company that you can work for, or starting your own business that is and getting support is it can be amazing. But I was thinking about the fact that I work. What people don't see though is that when I work, I come to work, I give it my all, I perform fine. I'm I'm doing well at work. When I get home, I'm so tired. I don't have time to cook dinners or energy to cook dinners. I don't have time, like the energy to clean. There's loads of things like I buy stuff to do with my son, like activities, and actually just don't have the energy to do them sometimes. And but they don't look at your life as a whole. They don't actually look at how work affects your post personal and home life as well, which I think is a really bad thing, because I go to work. So, they could say, like, if I wasn't working, they'd say, get you back to work, get back to work. But what would happen then is a lot of people would go to work, and that's the end of their life, basically. They would manage to do the work, but when they got home, if they were doing any hobbies or, looking after the kids, that probably would disappear, because the energy that they've used at home, they're now using at work. And then they use at work, finish the day, that's it. I've used, what's it, spoon theory, where you've used all your spoons. I've used all my spoons, and that's it. They've gone at work, because work, for anyone that works, you do lose a lot of your energy. Traveling, being at work, etc. And there's your spoons gone. So then your life basically disappears. Your fun, anything you ever had to enjoy. I don't really do any hobbies. I do go out sometimes because I have a child and I try to get out, but I do it whilst absolutely exhausted. Like I said, I don't clean, so I had to buy a cleaner. So once again, this is disabled tax, as they say. I don't really cook dinners anymore, and things like that. So I can work, but there is a consequence to that. I don't have much of a life outside of work, because it's very, very tiring. And I know that many people will feel the same, that once they go into work, fine, yeah, they manage to get there, and even though they've got a supportive company, they can do it. They won't do anything else though. They will live to work, and that's pretty much it. So I think there's this problem around actually not understanding how people who are disabled, their lives, how they exist, and how much energy they have, because we're so focused on getting them into work. People are not robot drones that can just go to work and then not do anything afterwards. You need to be able to enjoy your life. What's the point otherwise? There's no point. And this is my other, I'm going to go a bit of a rant here. This is the other point. Oh, you should be lucky for what you've got. You shouldn't actually, you see it in time. Oh, people with benefits shouldn't enjoy themselves. The thing with you shouldn't have a nice car, no BMWs, no BMWs for you, or things like that. You shouldn't have a mobile phone. You shouldn't have Netflix. That's it. If you're disabled, or and sadly haven't got any money, that's it. No enjoyment for you. You're not allowed it. And I'm like, how cruel is that? This is people's lives. Why are we wanting people to spend their lives in misery? We should be wanting everyone to have a lovely life. I just don't understand it. So
I really agree with you, Anna, because is the scenarios. Those people, they are sitting down on the creating this legislation. How far they go? That's the first question I would ask. And are there any members of the disabled community attached to their decision making? That's another question I would ask. Do they blanketly create all the legislation, like, okay, this is going to be for ND people, this is going to be for people they don't have arms, this is going to be people they are mentally ill, this is going to be this is going to be that. But what I can see is just like a form that you need to fill up, and I think that form is for everyone. So when you have a single form for to create I think thousands of different type of characteristics, you cannot judge them properly. And what will happen? Someone, maybe training nurse, will call you, or you will go for a interview session, and they will ask you most of the harsh questions, and you will say yes and no. Based on that, they will say, okay, we determine that you are not qualified for this, because you can do things. But what we need to change, like, yes, you can do things, but you need these aids. Like you said, okay, if I'm going for work, when I come back home, I don't have any energy. So if I would have an extra help, support, maybe for a couple of hours each day, that they can support us with those things that we cannot do, that will make our life less misery, and make us happy. So there is also debate in the atmosphere with able people and disabled people. What? That okay, you are accessing benefits. That means, as you said earlier, you are not entitled to anything.
Mm.
You're not entitled for happiness. You're not entitled to have a good house. You're not entitled to have good cars. Why? Because you're accessing benefits. But there are thousands, even millions of people out there like us that we can't get the benefits due to our the gray areas we fall in. uh, we struggle.
Mm.
We struggle a lot. We
Yeah.
struggle a lot. And at the end, it gives us more misery, mental health problems, physical problems, all those things kicked in, and we have to end our work.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? Eventually, you get so tired you can't work anymore, and then it's just this vicious circle of just they're trying to get people back into work, they push them to work, don't support them, and then they come back out of work, or they'll work less or reduced hours. So it is frustrating to be able to do that. And I think also, I pay a fair amount of tax, but I get access to work, but I don't get PIP or anything like that. But I'm quite happy for people to get PIP with my money, because the thing is, we're not all born, and come into this life, or at some point in our life, we don't always sit at the same place. Some people need more help than others, and it feels fair that people get help with with where they are. I'm from a very poor background. I'm in I was from council estate and things like that, and I was lucky. I was clever. I was luckily clever. I do actually think my ADHD helped me a lot with being able to see things and do well in school. My parents were reasonably well educated. We didn't have anyone gone to uni, but they were educated and fairly driven. So I was lucky, but a lot of my friends struggled to fulfill their dreams. They all had dreams. We all had dreams. I sort of managed to sort of break out and fulfill my dreams, but I know several others who didn't, and it frustrates them that they never managed to break the cycle. But actually, I would, some of their parents weren't as encouraging, or weren't able to push them further. So actually, I would quite happily help them, because even though I feel like I came from a place of not so much privilege, there are people that had less privilege than I did, and I'm quite happy to help the people that had less privilege, because it means that we can level things up and give everyone a good chance and a good shot at life, and I'm a massive believer in there's no point just working to live. You need to live as a person. That's our whole, that's our potential to enjoy ourselves, to do good things. And actually, you find the people that are disabled, neurodiverse, tend to be the most empathetic, and tend to be the most people that volunteer as well to help others. So there's a really big reason to help this community. And I really get frustrated that people are villainized all the time, because they just didn't have as much privilege in life to be healthy. Health privilege, or whatever privilege it is that people have got. And I feel like I'm quite happy to help them, because disability is one of the things that anybody can experience in their life, no matter what background you come from. You see these actors and actresses, I was watching an interview with, I've forgotten his name, the guy that played Dr. Frankenfurter in the Rocky Horror Show, Tim Curry. And, I think he had a stroke and he's in a wheelchair. He has a lot of money, but disability can come to any of us at any point. And actually, I'm quite happy to invest in my future, that if maybe one day I might become disabled. My dad, was always strong as an ox, is now disabled and has carers 4 times a day. At one point we could all, this is an investment in our own future, not just everyone else's.
I totally agree with you, and I think our you know when we think about changing the legislation, it has to be aid to everyone. If you have a legislation that will not aid majority of the people, they actually require and they will invest in the future of the growth of the country. That's not fit for purpose, because I think the benefit system, all these things, on my opinion, it is a little bit broken. Why it is broken? I give my explanation of that. People, they pay huge tax, okay, in the level that we work, and when they get off sick or they are out of work, they don't get that much back. Yeah. So in that scenario, you have a very wealthy lifestyle, you contributed to the economy, and then maybe you become disabled, like you said, your father, or there are hundreds or thousands of people, they have these kind of scenarios. And then they cannot get the wealthy lifestyle they maintain. What will happen? They will ask you, okay, you need to sell your property, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. But the money you contributed working towards it, you not get it back. And I think that's the point. It is broken because it is not fair for those people. They are contributing hugely to the economy, and they become off sick or they become disabled, or all of those kind of things, and they don't get it back. So how you can fix these things? I think it has to be tailored, on my opinion, that okay, you are X person, you have these disabilities, so doesn't matter how much you are earning or how much you are giving, you will get this much back. Or if you are benefiting the community, or if you are benefiting the country with your knowledge, with your work, so you will get it returned this much back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny actually, because I had similar with maternity pay, because as a woman, I was the main wage earner in our family, so much higher wage earner, and actually the maternity pay is tiny, the statutory maternity pay. And so I couldn't have that long off because I was the main wage earner. I supported us and paid for the mortgage and things like that. And so it was incredibly difficult when, as a woman, I had to have maternity leave. And this was before, things were introduced more with being able to share paternity and maternity. But it meant that I just couldn't have any time off because I earned a certain amount, like you said, put a lot of tax back in to the government. But yet when I was off on maternity, I mean, it was like, what is it, £100 a week or something? I couldn't live on it. It was ridiculous. So we burnt through our savings, all of that money that I'd saved really carefully, burnt through it because we had to pay the mortgage. And it was incredibly difficult. I mean, that one particularly affects women because women tend to be the main ones off with maternity. And it is incredibly hard when you suddenly, we're trying to push women to be equally the main wage earners and pushing us up in the workplace. Yet when you have time off, and if you're the main wage earner, you then I can't have any time off with my baby because I'm the main wage earner and I can't afford to cover that time off. It's, some of these things are really broken. They don't, I feel like everything's at war. We're trying to do this, but then we're not doing this, and we're taking this way. It makes, nothing quite works as it should, which is very frustrating. So it means that we never end up equalised because there's they give you something and take it away with the other. I mean, it's like, I'm going to give you an example. Actually, my dad. So my dad's disabled, and he gets the winter fuel allowance because he doesn't have much money, and he gets it coming in. And so he's one of the ones that is eligible for winter fuel allowance because they consider him so low income that he needs money for heating. Mm-hmm. Yet what happens is when he became disabled, his local council do an assessment to see, because he's got carers 4 times a day, and they do an assessment to see if he can afford to pay carers. So they've decided he can, even though the government have said he's so low income that he needs to get winter fuel allowance. They're now making him pay quite a lot of money each month. So what's happened is the government have given him a winter fuel allowance, and then the local council have taken it back tenfold to pay for carers. So which is it? Is he so poor that he needs a winter fuel allowance, or is he well off enough that he can pay? Nothing makes sense. So basically, that winter fuel allowance is not paying for his heating. That's going back to the local council to pay for his carers. And nothing, like, make it make sense. Nothing makes sense with any of this stuff. And I think benefits are great things, but I am in agreement with you, Dr. Shah. They are a little bit broken, because to me, that in my head, how does that make sense? You're giving people money from the government, and yet you're giving it back to yourselves. It doesn't make sense. And he doesn't have much money. And yet, once again, going back to that, if you're disabled, that you don't deserve any money. So, the local council take as much as they can so that he can't have enough money to do anything interesting, because, not that he does, because he's disabled and doesn't go out anywhere, but, he buys your DVD for himself and maybe gets your takeaway. Not much, because he needs some enjoyment in his life rather than just sitting in the house in the dark all the time. He needs some enjoyment in his life, because that would be miserable otherwise. And yet they're like, no, we're going to just take away all this little bit, so you've got no money at all, because you're not allowed to enjoy yourself because you're disabled and you're getting money from the government, even though you've paid into the government for your entire life. And because my dad worked as a taxi driver, he's paid in all of his life, and no, not allowed it. No, that's it. No money for you. So
that's the hard thing, isn't it? We thank everyone for joining today's live. As we have a problem with LinkedIn, you are watching this webinar through YouTube and Facebook. So we have some questions here. I just wanted to share that. It says, Chris, I would say, hi Anna, maybe I missed. Anyways, just wondering, what are your top horizon scanning tools for predicting new regulations 2 years out? How do we innovate before the law change?
Excuse me. It's that time of year, isn't it? Sneezing and coughing time of year. Do you know what? It is incredibly hard. I say horizon scan. Mine tends to be quite manual. It's an ear to the ground, understanding, trying to understand what's going on in the future. So I do a lot of desk-based research, but I do follow industry news quite regularly. I've got a podcast called Creating the Curve, and we had a speaker on called Mark Schaefer, who talked about, because he's a futurist and does a lot of future thinking, and his was around, he does a lot of industry interviews and talking with people. So he gave a great example that he was working in the chemical industry, and this company had this product, and they were doing interviews with their customers, and they'd interviewed a few different customers. And towards the end of one of the interviews, someone said, "Oh, did you know that that they're looking to ban this component in the next couple of years?" And they went, "Oh, no, we didn't. That's really interesting." And they said, "Oh, that's on the horizon now. So what should we do?" So what they did is they actually developed, in this sort of timescale, a new sort of product. So if this thing happened, they could swap over fairly swiftly. And what happened is it did get banned, and so they were ready and ready to go with this new product. But it was really interesting, because a lot of this stuff is very much word on the street, because it is incredibly hard to find out what's going on. So you can get like some social listening tools, which are quite good. AI, once again, is a really good researcher, but you do have to be quite specific in what you're searching for. For example, if I'm looking at neurodiversity, I that's why I've been following the employment bill and things like that, because I knew they're coming out. But you have to try and sort of find the areas that you think are going to be affecting people. So I follow things like, for neurodiversity and things, I follow access to work. I follow DWP. I follow a lot of the government stuff on employment rights for those. And then for the other stuff I do, which is business support, I do a lot around funding and finance. So I follow a lot of, get a lot of newsletters in from sort of grant funding companies, Innovate UK, all of those. And it is a lot of very manual social listening. But like I said, AI can really help with that, because you can get it to go out there, and if it's a topic that you want, see if you can find anything that is current, which might mean a change in your industry, which has saved me a little bit of time from all the manual listening. But things like customer interview is amazing. Go out and interview all of your customers or other people in your industry, have coffees with them, because I tell you what, the tidbits you get from them, best future listening possible.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, Anna. And I think, when you think about planning your future, I think you need to check every possibilities, what you actually specifically will be granted, I would say. Because I made 2 mistakes in my past PIP applications, twice. Once, when I had my brain tumor operation, and then I didn't know anything about it. I was disabled. I could not apply properly. So I went to the tribunal, and they judged my intelligence rather than judging my disabilities. They said, okay, you're a very intelligent person. So I think, okay, you can do all of those things. So you are not capable of having it. And then what I did, I was very upset, and I didn't apply for 10, 15 years. And then again, I applied this year. I did the same mistake, that they asked me, can you do this? Yes, I can do that. But I told them that, yes, sometimes I cannot, because this is my working capacity. This is the things that I do. I thought that the person interviewed me, they are clever, so they would picture that way. But what they did everything. Yes, 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 yes. That means I was honest. I pictured myself, what I can do, what I cannot. And they did the same thing, that, okay, you are capable, so you're not getting PIP. But they did not include anything on their report that those days I struggled. So when you applying, I would say definitely go for a professional person. I think next year I will apply again, because I have struggles, and those struggles can be minimized with my own initiatives. So go to a professional person, think about specifically the worst case scenario, tell them the only worst case scenario. What you can do, don't tell them that you can do. You can't do, tell them this is the worst case scenario, I cannot. So in that way, like they have different type of criteria, like preparation, food, looking after yourself, going out, and a lot of other things. So you need to tell what you can do, what you can't. If you cannot do something at regular time, and sometimes you can, don't tell you can, because commonly you can't. So then you will score high, and you will get the benefit. Otherwise, because this is not fit for purpose, you will say, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. So that the way they will not give you, because it's a blanket leave thing. It's one box for everyone. So otherwise you will not get it.
I feel like, as well as disabled, we tend to be quite positive about ourselves, because we try and, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do it. Can you really do it? I'm too positive about myself. Oh yeah, I can do it. And actually I can't. It's just things like, I haven't cleaned my house for a year, because I literally have no energy to clean. But if someone said to me, oh, can you clean your house? I'd probably say yes, because I tend to be quite positive. Oh yeah, I'm sure I could clean it. Yeah, but yet there's a reason why I didn't clean it in a year. So it's one of those things, you tend to look at you can do stuff rather than you can't. And actually, when you think about it, I read lots of things about, people that, don't have disabilities and what they get done in a day. And I'm like, really? You get all that done? And I just feel like people are more like me. And I'm like, oh no, actually, maybe I am not, maybe I am struggling a bit more. But because I think, particularly if you've been disabled for a long time, or struggle for a long time. It's just normal, if that makes any sense. You don't see what other people like. And it was weird actually, because I was looking the other day, because my son's autistic, and we were talking about our kids, and I was talking with someone who's neurotypical, and their kid gets themselves dressed, gets themselves a sandwich, can do this, that, and the other, and I'm like, oh, well, my son can't do any of that. We've tried, but he can't. He's just not able to yet. And they were like, oh yeah, he gets himself up ready in the morning, I put his clothes out for him, but he gets himself dressed. They were like, and then he goes down and makes himself some toast. And I'm like, what toast? What, puts it in the toaster and butters it and everything. And yeah. And then, and sometimes he'll make his lunch. I'm like, what? Makes his lunch? But because I've only got one child, I actually I don't know what a non-disabled child looks like. So for me, this is my normal. And it's really interesting, when I was doing things like filling out the application for his DLA, I was like, I didn't know what other children could do and what he could do. So this is where I started asking other people, and it was really interesting to see how much, like, oh yeah, he does this. And I went round someone's house, and their son was just upstairs playing on his own on his computer, didn't need anything, came down to get his own drinks and things like that. And I'm like, my son won't play without me. That's unusual. My brain couldn't understand. And I was like, oh wow, at this age, a lot of parents get a lot of free time, and I don't get any free time. And their children go to bed by themselves, and they sleep and things. And when you start, and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe this is harder on top of other things. And actually, that's the other thing that they don't account for in things like PIPs and that very much, is caring responsibilities. Because not only am I working, but also I am caring for a disabled child whilst being disabled, which is twice as much work, I've found out over the years, compared to, and so much so that, they awarded us some DLA for him. But DLA doesn't pay for my energy. There's not enough there that I could pay for a full-time carer or somewhere. It helps for things like some of the devices he needs, or extra cab rides or extra things that he needs, but it's not enough that I could pay for someone to actually replace me. So then you've got disabled people looking after disabled people whilst working, and it's just horrendous. And yet there's not really any help for people. It's really hard.
A similar way, I would say, Anna. I think community, they don't raise their voices. That's one thing. When it's come to legislation, they are confused what they can get, what they cannot. One thing. Secondly, I think the government or councils, they wanted to stop giving you money. Okay, how they can save. One thing most of the people nowadays are talking about, you have money to give other countries for their aid or different type of things, but you are not thinking about your own people. Okay, there's another thing. So yes, a country, to make you stand in the global space, you need to spend money. But before you spend that money, you need to think about, okay, are you valuing your own people who are there, who are willing, engaging or contributing to the community, or suffering in the lowest space. And another thing, I think, as being a disabled person, because I work many disabled people, they have low self-esteem. Like, okay, I cannot do work and I'm getting benefits, that's enough for me. But they never question, like, is that enough for you? Or do you don't deserve a decent life, as we discussed earlier. You need to question that, and you need to project who you are and how you can do, and you need to say to the government, yes, now is the time to think, rethink. And we know about the Molly Russell case, like, okay, for the Instagram one, like people, children, they are dying. So legislation can be changed through massive campaign, like it's did for Molly, And there are other food poisoning cases and a lot of other things. Legislation is coming. But if we do not put pressure on government, it will never be changed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm going back to what you said earlier about how many disabled people are actually consulted, and also, you also mentioned earlier, like disabled is such a spectrum. That it's very much a one size fits all system, but actually you need a huge amount of input to understand what the different lives are of disabled people, because you might, like we said, you might have a disabled person that is a carer for someone else who's disabled. You might have someone that actually is finds life easier because they don't have care, someone to care for, and actually they can manage. I managed my fibro and ADHD much better before I had a son. I managed, because I got rest and sleep and that, so actually it didn't affect me so much. But since I've had a child, and I didn't know how much it would affect me because I'd never had a child before, it's quite extreme. And I've not just got a child, I've got a disabled child, so it's all that extra stuff. And do you know what, it's funny because when I see like them talking about getting people back into work and everything, and back to that sort of self-esteem side, a lot of it, I believe, is that they want disabled to people to do just manual or boring jobs. Like, they don't want anyone to have dreams. I have family members that are disabled, and they offered them a voluntary place in a cafe, and I'm like, firstly, you're not even paid. So disabled people don't deserve to get paid. I mean, you could argue she gets benefits, but so that's the pay. But and then it's always something. It's never like, oh, let's give you some work in a law firm or something that might be mentally stimulating. Because I think there is this one, back to what you were saying about, oh, you're intelligent, so you can do stuff, Dr. Shah. There's this seems to be this weird thing that disabled people don't have any brain power or something, that we're not intelligent because we're disabled. And actually, there are so many clever. I mean, look at Stephen Hawking. It's an extreme example, but still, my son is very clever. He's very clever. He just struggles to access learning, but he's super clever. He wants to be a robot scientist. Yeah, what I think when they think, oh, let's get people into work, I think let's get them into minimum wage. There's nothing wrong with a minimum wage job, but if your child has dreams, they don't want to know about those dreams. They just want to oh, that's what you deserve. That's what it's that sort of lowest rung, isn't it? That's all you deserve. That's voluntary work, something you're not going to enjoy or find boring or not mentally stimulating. That's it for you. Rather than the fact they could become a top lawyer or a robot scientist or something exciting, which actually would put a huge value on the economy. Imagine all the disabled people actually doing their dream jobs and all that brain power. It'd be amazing, but no.
I totally agree with you, Anna, because you probably know one of my business partner. I just engaged with his business access advisor, and his name is Rob Trent. He's full disabled. He doesn't have specific limbs power to work with his hands or legs or whatever. So what he does, he uses his mouth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He was a computer programmer. Can you imagine that? He retired now, and he get the atmosphere like you talk about Stephen Hawking's. His brain was working, and everything was dead. But the thing he did for the humanity, you cannot value them. It's it's totally different. So okay, you are disabled, and you're going to be putting into some places where it's just like those things, like okay, in a cafe or in a superstore or in a somewhere, they will dump you, and there isn't any boundary to cross, because Disabled people, like if I give this example for Rob Trent, he's a mouth artist. So he creates, amazing portrait, amazing art through his mouth.
Mm.
And he was a computer programmer. So these things has to be changed based on your talent, I would say.
Yeah.
If things like that, my son is autistic, I am autistic, and there are many other people. They have different type of neurodiversity spectrum. But if you think that that person, they are not capable of doing intelligent work, they are not capable of doing. Okay, they can be a scientist,
Mm.
NASA scientist. They can be a robotic engineers. What do you think? Okay, he's a disabled person. He doesn't have any knowledge. He doesn't have any dream. You just go to the drain. So
Mm.
that way the cleverness drained to the community. And another thing, there isn't enough awareness. So like I'm a parent. I understand well, but think about millions of other parents. They don't have any idea about the current technology, about the society, about their rights, and what they think. Okay, my son is very old, so I wouldn't send him to these places. Oh, he cannot do work, because they do not give dream to their future
Mm.
generation. So we are creating a generation where they don't have any future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to, I think we've talked about it previously, which is around, like when diagnosis happens and things like it's a deficit based system. So they look at the negatives of things rather than the positives. So if you're disabled, if you're neurodiverse, it's, when they score you to find out if you're neurodiverse, it's, for me, it wasn't, oh, she can spot patterns and interesting things like that. It's, oh, she can't concentrate. Oh, she's late to things. It's always the negative side. And I think that doesn't help as well, because they score people on, these are all the negative things that you can do. And so you must have ADHD or autism. It wasn't like, that my son can remember 3,000 facts about every single name, every single Pokemon, Bakugan, because that was autistic symptoms, but they're not negative ones. So they didn't score him on those. They scored him on his unusual speech patterns and the fact that he hasn't, he doesn't understand time and things like that. And I'm just like, this is, I think sometimes it stems from this, because you look at all the negatives, and sometimes there are negatives of being disabled. Yeah, we admit it, because that's why we need help. But actually, maybe we need to start back with our diagnosis process of looking at the positives as well, because back to the self-esteem, if someone goes, oh yeah, you're autistic, here's all your bad traits in a document. Oh great, thanks. Yeah, I feel really good about myself now. Yeah, and then at that point you're like, right, I'm autistic, I can't do most of these things. What hope have I got? It's all very broken, because actually and then as a parent, and like you said, I know about the positives of autism and things like that, so I can help my son and go, actually, ignore that. Yeah, that is the things I'll deal with that. These are the good things you can do, and you concentrate on these ones. I'll deal with those. But actually, when I speak to a lot of other parents who go to quite a few SEN things, and they're always very negative. There's quite a lot of people that are very negative. When I found out my son was autistic, I thought my life was over. Literally, like, that level, because they've been taught that this is a really bad thing, and it's the end of the world. But actually, that mindset change needs to happen, doesn't it?
I totally agree with you, and you know that we pointed these things to the people, because you need to think now. And if this live webinar is watched by any of the legislator that you are working to create new legislation, I would think you need to talk to disabled people. There are neurodivergent people. There you will find thousands of people in workplace, thousands of people in education, thousands of people in the community, who are working to make our life momentum, make
Mm.
this society different. So until you get the essence, like, okay, I am autistic or I am dyslexic or I have a disability, don't consider that I have that disability. Consider that what talent I have. So if you aid your budget to increase that talent, like we talk about Stephen Hawking, we talk about Rob Trent, and there are many other disabled people. See how they are supporting or they are contributing to the community. So don't judge people on their disability, judge about talent. Then you can bring lots of talents to the community. Like, okay, if someone is thinking about to be astronaut, aid them with that, give them money, give them support. They will amaze you, because as I know, being a disabled person for such a long time, and with neurodiversity, I know we have huge focus on things that we wanted to do. Yeah, and we can be successful. I give my example all the time, like, okay, what person I was in when I was young age, but only one thing changed my life. My mother, she said, do those things that you are good at. Okay, don't think who is saying you what. Okay, consider what you are good at. I found my niche and I changed my life being a disabled. And if you don't have that mentality, the society will not change. Even if you change the legislation, it will not tailor anyone, and it will be wastage of money. And there won't be any future generation who can support specifically for the next growth of the country.
Yeah, 100% agree. I just feel, they keep saying about getting people into the workplace. I'm like, there's so many talented people that want to get into the workplace, but in the right way. There was one the other day, and it was sort of talking about, like how we can get like more engineers and how we could get more this and more of that. I'm like, there's so many people that are probably good at that, but they're just overlooked. Come and encourage people to get into these exciting careers. And open up. We talked about it the other day, didn't we, about the fact that when you're the access requirements to some of these things are not right. So you need English and maths for everything, even if that subject doesn't need English and maths. So actually look at how we're letting people access that further education and apprenticeships and job roles, because you're going to miss out on some really great talent because of arbitrary rules that actually don't make sense.
I totally agree with you. We have so many comments on our chat comment box. So I'm just going to add one comment. So we are nearly end of our session. It's 1 p.m. Although we have started a few minutes later and we have a technical issues on LinkedIn. But we're glad that you found this interesting to everyone. We talk about legislation, and you know that Anna and I, we're working for the Andy Business Club, and we wanted to create create people and as well as enough awareness that we can go to the government and ask them to change the legislation based on a longitudinal research. Sorry, I have my speech problem, so I cannot pronounce such in words. But that doesn't limit my work. It doesn't limit you either. You probably have many other talents that I don't have. So think about your talent. So someone asked these questions. Okay, got it. So can regulation act as a catalyst for innovation rather than a constraint? And what example have you seen where this has worked?
Oh, do you know what? That's a really good one. And actually, I haven't seen many things where it has worked. And back to the problems that we have in that the specialists aren't setting the regulations. You tend to have people, and it's so weird. Every time regulations are set, there's people on the ground everywhere going, what are they doing? This doesn't make sense. And you have real experts, generally across the board going, no, it doesn't work. That's not how it works. I went to a session a while ago, and there was DHL there saying, like as one of the biggest fleets in the UK, Has the government talked to us about converting to electricity and whether their plans are doable? No, they don't speak to businesses or disabled. Yeah, they may speak to a few, but not generally loads of them. And actually, what you need to do is get a really balanced thing. So actually, it could be a catalyst for innovation because sometimes you need guardrails for things, like AI. There can be some really unethical things happening with different technologies and different things, but I haven't seen many that it is successful because a lot of the time they're impractical or they're not based on reality. So I would love to see some that were actually realistic. But the new employment bill, there were a few good things on there, and I do agree with them. I'm like, actually, that there's a good few bits here that might protect people and open them up to join, coming back into work. And as we know, a more diverse workforce means more innovation. So yeah, it's great. But actually, regulations often fall short. Governments overcomplicate them or don't grasp the full case of what's happening. So I haven't seen many really that do work, but in theory they should put safeguarding and guardrails around something to protect people, but be open enough to actually work. So I don't know about you, Dr. Shah. Have you seen any ones that actually work?
I totally agree with you, and I haven't seen anything that work for everyone. But because as this is the why we are talking about it, like what you need to change in the legislation, because it's not a legislation cannot be done with a single box. It has to be tailored to a specific person or specific things. If it comes to neurodiversity, if it comes to disability, if it comes to any other domain, because you will find similar trend and unsimilar trend. Similar, like I'm autistic or dyslexic, and I have different characteristics to similar person, another person. Okay, you cannot match them together. Yes, some of the things will be aligned with the characteristics, but most of the things will not be aligned. So if you wanted to impose a legislation, you need this research. So how you can categorize individual person. And Anna, you told about AI. In AI, you can do work in less time. You can create a intelligent model that can characterize neurodivergent people or disabled people in millions of patterns. So you can choose and select, okay, this is this pattern, and this pattern, this legislation can be added to them, or this pattern, this can be added to them, and then it will work. Otherwise, a single box for everyone, doesn't matter you are disabled, you are neurodivergent or whatever, will never work.
Yeah, 100% agree. I just I do think you're right. AI is good at connecting the dots that people don't see, and it's great with this qualitative data that you can't normally put together, because that's the thing. Back to that thing, we're not checkboxes. There's shades of grey across the entire area, and you can't fill that out with just a bit of tick boxes and quantitative. You've got to get this stories and people's lives. And you're right, AI is perfect. That's what I use AI really for when I'm looking at data. It's spotting patterns in huge amounts of qualitative data. So I absolutely agree.
Thank you, Anna. I think we have nearly finished our live webinar. So it was our last webinar for 2025. We're going to be bringing another 12 live webinar next year in 2026, and we will try to get as much possible as people understand what we do, as well as how we can contribute to change legislation for fit for purpose, and as well as support more disabled person. If you're in a business, or you are students, or whatever, you are a community worker, you can come to us. I and Anna, we both support many people with our knowledge, business development, marketing, technology, whatever. You can get in touch with us, and we can at least signpost you what you can do and what you can achieve. So until next year, I think we will have our next January session at the end of the January, because 1st of January and middle of January, people will return back from work and they will join. So until then, thank you very much, and thank you, Anna, for this combination of work that we're doing last 2 years. We have done it, and we're going to be doing next year as well. And thank you, everyone. We need your support, Anna.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming along this year, and really looking forward to coming back next year. You know, we've got to stick together as a community and help each other, and this is why Dr. Michelle and I are doing these, because, you know, we want to help others, and just, you know that you're not alone, really. Mm-hmm. So, you know, for those that celebrate, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and then for those who don't, just have a lovely break, a reset for the new year.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, Anna, and thank you very much, everyone. And bye-bye. Have a nice, a brilliant Christmas and New Year. And we will welcome you next year. Bye-bye.
Bye.